Yeah, this paper, getting a little bit more recent now, is trying to estimate this interrelationship, not just social capital having an effect possibly on health, but health having an effect on social capital. And to do it, these authors have two measures. They've got the individual degree of generalized trust. In other words, individuals' responses to this question. Generally speaking, would you say that most people can be trusted? Or that you can't be too careful in dealing with people? Please tell me in a score 0 to 10, where 0 means you can't be too careful, and 10 means most people can be trusted. So it's a fairly standard trust question, ranging from 0 to 10. 0, you've virtually no trust in people. 10, you trust virtually everybody. And obviously something in between. And so that's the individual measure of generalized trust. The community measure, or community social capital, is the mean of the individual values. So in the locality. So if you're interviewing people in different localities, the community social capital measure is the mean value of individual respondents in that locality. So here's an example where quite explicitly the authors are arguing that community social capital is directly a consequence of the individual levels, because it's making its measure just the average of the individual responses. However, what the authors do is explore different measures of the average. So for example, in the baseline, the standard measure, they define this reference group, who are you comparing yourself to, as all people in the same region as the person, individual I, who are at most 10 years older or 10 years younger. So it's an age-based reference group. I'll just repeat that. If we go back, the individual measure, you just ask the individual respondent about their level of trust. The social capital measure is the average of the individuals, but not the average of everybody, the average of people in your area 10 years, within a 10-year age range of you, 10 years above, 10 years below. Also then varies it to quite a complicated one. Residents of the same region as individual I, whose age belongs to the interval age times 2 plus 0.2 times age. It's like one of these formulas. I don't know if you ever come across them. For men and women, let's say, now I do realize some men prefer men and some women prefer women, but let's just take the example of men and women. There's alleged to be a formula. What age range is appropriate? So for a man, let's say, it's 8 years plus half the age of the woman. Something like that. So the idea being that a 30-year-old man, half of the age of 30 is 15 plus 8, 23. So for a 30-year-old man, a 23-year-old woman might be appropriate. Or for a 50-year-old man, half of 50, 25 plus 8, a 33-year-old woman might be appropriate. I mean, it's wonderfully ingrained sexism. But it's just an example. Have you ever come across these sort of formulas? Oh, you haven't? Oh well. Believe me, they exist. I'm sure they have no scientific basis. Although in principle you could model how well relationships survive and work out a formula. Anyway, this is a bit like that, taking age and then a fraction of it and adding in a number, and this is giving you the reference group. And then the final one is another age-based one where it's a sort of sliding scale. Doesn't really matter too much, but it's basically recognizing that, or it's asserting that the community social capital is can be based on individual measure, but it's not just an average of everybody, it's an average of an age-based group, like a reference group. And I think the idea is that younger people, when they're thinking about trust and so on, and the trust that's in the community, they maybe tend to think of people roughly their age, a bit older, a bit younger. Maybe older people, when they're thinking about what is the level of trust in the community, they are thinking about trust in a sort of older age range. That's the idea, rather than thinking just a straight average. Okay, I think we stop there, and I leave you hanging what Rocco et al. Found, and we resume again at 1 o'clock. Is that okay? And we can have questions all about this age reference as well. It's quite an interesting question. Who do you have in mind when you are asked to or who would you have in mind if you were characterizing some of these measures in your community? Is it every last person, or do you think of a particular group that may be of a similar age to you? Anyway, we'll discuss that this afternoon.